Commander Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the huge alien meeting room. The walls were tall and curved, made of some kind of shiny metal that reflected the lights from above. Hundreds of seats were filled with creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and many had skin that glowed with strange colors. Jake had been to many places in his 45 years, but this was different. This was the Galactic Council, where the most powerful species in the galaxy made decisions that affected billions of lives. Earth had been part of this group for only 30 years, which was nothing compared to the thousands of years these other species had been traveling between stars. The noise in the room was getting louder. Aliens were pointing at Jake, and now other humans with arms, claws, and things that might have been fingers. Their voices mixed together in a sound that hurt his ears. Jake could feel sweat on his forehead, but he kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing fear was the worst thing you could do when surrounded by enemies. Dr. Lisa Hammond stepped closer to him. She was Earth's best diplomat, a woman who could speak 12 different alien languages and had spent her whole life trying to make peace between different species. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes looked worried. "Jake, they're really angry this time," she whispered. "I've never seen them this worked up." Jake nodded, but said nothing. He was watching the tall crystal creature that was walking toward them. This was Keth Valor, the ambassador from the Zephyrian Empire. His body looked like it was made of blue glass, and when he moved, light danced through him in patterns that made Jake's eyes hurt. Keth Valor raised one of his 4 arms and pointed it at Jake. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass mixed with wind chimes. "Human Morrison, your species has gone too far. You build colonies where you are not wanted. You take planets that do not belong to you." "We followed the rules," Jake said calmly. "Every planet we settled was marked as empty on your own maps. We checked twice." "Empty does not mean available to primitives," hissed another voice. Jake turned to see the serpentine delegate sliding toward them. Her body was long and covered in green and black scales that moved like water. Her head was shaped like a snake's, with yellow eyes that never blinked. "Your species learned to make fire yesterday in galactic time. You have no right to claim worlds that have existed for millions of years." The room erupted in sounds of agreement. Creatures chittered, roared, hummed, and made noises that Jake couldn't even describe. The message was clear. Humanity had become a problem that needed to be solved. Jake looked around the room and counted. There were delegates from over 300 different species. Each one represented a civilization that had been exploring space since before humans had learned to write. Their ships were bigger, their weapons more powerful, and their technology far more advanced than anything Earth could build. But Jake had been a soldier before he became a diplomat. He had fought in wars on Earth where humans had been outnumbered and outgunned, and he had seen what happened when people were pushed too far. There was something these aliens didn't understand about humans, something they couldn't see because they had never been desperate enough to discover it. The fat, slug-like creature at the center of the room began to speak. This was Mortess, the Chancellor of the Galactic Council. His voice was deep and wet, like someone talking through mud. "The decision is made. Humanity will leave all disputed systems immediately. You will not build any new colonies for 50 years. You will not send any more ships to explore new worlds. You will stay where you are told to stay. And if we say no?" Jake asked. The room became quiet. Every eye, sensor, and alien sense organ turned toward him. Mortess's multiple eyes focused on Jake like he was some kind of interesting bug. "Then you will be removed from the council," Mortess said slowly, "and you will face the consequences of being alone in a galaxy full of species that no longer consider you friends." Jake thought about the human colonies scattered across dozens of worlds. He thought about the families who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. He thought about the children who had been born on those worlds and knew no other home. These aliens wanted to destroy all of that because they were afraid of what humans might become. He thought about the research stations where human scientists worked day and night to understand the universe. He thought about the trading posts where humans bought and sold goods with friendly alien species. He thought about the exploration ships that were even now heading toward distant stars, carrying the hopes and dreams of his entire species. That would be lost if they gave in to these demands. Humanity would become prisoners in their own solar system, forever dependent on the mercy of species that saw them as children who needed to be controlled. Jake had seen what happened to species that let others control their destiny. They withered and died, becoming nothing more than pets or servants. He would not let that happen to humanity. The silence stretched on. Dr. Hammond was looking at him with pleading eyes, begging him to find some diplomatic solution. But Jake knew there was no compromise here. These aliens had made their choice, and now humanity had to make theirs. Jake looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who were counting on him to protect their future. He thought about the pioneers who had risked everything to reach the stars, and the generations yet to come who deserve the right to explore and grow. Fine, Jake said quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. War. The single word hit the room like a physical blow. Delegates gasped, shuddered, and made sounds of shock and disbelief. No species had ever chosen war when faced with the combined might of the Galactic Council. It was suicide, madness, impossible. But Jake Morrison was human, and humans had a long history of choosing impossible fights when the alternative was surrender. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Every communication channel, every news network, every diplomatic channel carried the same impossible message. Humanity had declared war on the Galactic Council. Most species thought it was a joke. Some thought it was a translation error. None of them thought it was serious. Back on Earth, deep under the Pentagon building, Admiral Carol Stevens walked back and forth in a room filled with glowing screens and flashing lights. The walls showed maps of human space, with little dots representing colonies, mining stations, research outposts, and trading centers. 37 worlds where humans had built homes, raised families, and created new lives among the stars. Was 52 years old and had spent her entire adult life in the military. She had short brown hair that was starting to turn gray and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had joined the Space Force the day after humanity made first contact with aliens, knowing that someday this moment would come. "They're giving us 3 days," said Colonel Dan Richards, reading from a screen that showed messages from the Council. "After that, they start what they call enforcement actions." Dan was younger than Carol, maybe 35, with the kind of calm voice that never changed no matter how bad the news was. He had been her second in command for 5 years, and she trusted him more than anyone else in the military. President Susan. Blake's face appeared on the big screen at the front of the room. She was calling in from the White House, her image flickering slightly because of the secure connection. Susan was the first woman president, elected 3 years ago on a promise to expand human presence in space. Now she might be the president, who had to watch it all disappear. "What do we have?" Susan asked. 18 active warships, Carol answered. "Maybe 30 more that we could finish building in the next few months. The Council has over 3,000 frontline ships, not counting the personal fleets of member species. So we're outnumbered about 100 to 1, the president said quietly. "Actually, it's worse than that," Dan added. "Intelligence says they're mobilizing everything they have. They want to make an example of us." Carol stopped walking and looked at the screens showing human space. Such a small area compared to the vast galaxy around them. But every dot on those maps represented people who were counting on her to protect them. "Ma'am," said a voice from the back of the room, "there is something else." Everyone turned to look at Dr. Raymond Clark, the head of the Human Defense Research Division. He was a thin man with thick glasses who looked more like a teacher than a weapons designer. But Carol knew that behind those glasses was one of the most dangerous minds in human space. "The projects you don't know about," Raymond continued. "The ones that aren't in any official records. We've been working on them since the day we joined the council." Carol felt her heart start to beat faster. She had heard rumors about secret projects, weapons that existed only in classified reports that she had never been allowed to see. Everyone in the military knew about the black projects, funded by money that officially didn't exist and staffed by scientists who had signed agreements to never speak about their work. "Show me," President Blake said. Raymond touched a control on his tablet, and the screens around the room changed. Instead of showing human space, they now showed technical drawings and test results for weapons that looked like nothing Carol had ever seen. "The Anvil program," Raymond said. "We've been developing it for 15 years. It's based on quantum mechanics that we barely understand ourselves." Carol looked at the drawings and felt a chill run down her spine. The weapon didn't look like much, just a small device that could be mounted on any ship. But the test results showed something impossible. In controlled tests, the Anvil had made entire asteroids simply disappear. Not destroyed, not broken apart, gone, as if they had never existed at all. "How many do we have?" she asked. 47 platforms are currently operational," Raymond replied. "Each one can be activated remotely. We've been installing them on our ships and space stations for the past 5 years." "The crews don't know?" Dan asked. "The crews think they're new shield generators," Raymond said. "Only the installation teams know what they really are, and they're all sworn to secrecy." "President." Blake was quiet for a long moment. "What else?" "Phase technology," Raymond continued. "Our ships can become invisible to all known sensors. Temporal shielding that puts our colonies slightly out of sync with normal time. And something we call the Prometheus Protocol." "What's that?" Carol asked. Raymond's face became very serious. "If humanity is ever completely defeated, if Earth is about to be destroyed, we activate Prometheus. Every star within 50 light years of Earth becomes unstable and explodes at the same time. It would destroy everything in this part of the galaxy, including us." The room became completely silent. Carol felt sick to her stomach. The idea that humanity had built a weapon that could destroy entire solar systems was terrifying. But the idea that they might need to use it was even worse. "You're talking about mutual destruction on a scale that's never been seen," President Blake said slowly. "Yes, ma'am," Raymond replied. "If we can't have the galaxy, no one can." Carol looked at the screens again. The alien fleets were already moving, thousands of ships heading toward human space. The greatest armada in galactic history, all aimed at destroying humanity's presence among the stars. But now she knew that humanity had secrets of their own, weapons that could erase matter from existence, technology that could make ships invisible, and the ultimate threat, a weapon that could turn stars into bombs. "They think they're hunting sheep," she said quietly. "What?" Dan asked. "The council. They think we're helpless. They see 18 ships and think that's all we have. They don't know about the Anvil platforms. They don't know about the phase technology. They don't know about any of it." Carol began to smile, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been underestimated by its prey. "They're about to learn something important about humans," she said. "We don't just roll over and die when someone threatens us. We fight back, and when we fight back, we fight to win." President Blake nodded. "Do it." Activate all the secret programs. Show them what happens when they try to cage humanity. As the meeting ended and the screens went dark, Carol Stevens stood alone in the command center. Tomorrow, the galaxy would discover that humanity had been preparing for this war since the day they first met aliens. The Council thought they were. Fighting primitives with 18 ships. They were about to learn that they were fighting humans with weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. The sleeping giant was about to wake up, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Alan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship was one of humanity's newest destroyers, sleek and powerful, but small compared to the massive alien vessels that were heading their way. The Defiance was positioned near the human colony on Kepler 442, a world where 30,000 people had built farms and cities over the past 15 years. Alan was 38 years old, with short black hair and steady brown eyes. He had joined the Space Navy right out of college, drawn by the promise of exploring the galaxy. Now he was about to fight for humanity's right to exist among the stars. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sophie Turner from her position at the sensor. "Station. I'm reading 12 ships approaching from the outer system. Mixed alien types, but I can identify at least 3 different species." Alan nodded and looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet looked like a collection of deadly jewels. Against the black of space, there was a Zephyrian cruiser leading the group, its crystal hull reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Behind it came Vorthan battleships, dark and angular like flying fortresses. Scattered around them were smaller ships from species that Alan didn't recognize. "How long until they reach us?" Alan asked. 18 minutes at current speed, Sophie replied. "The evacuation ships left 3 hours ago. They should be safely away by now." Alan felt some relief at that news. The colonists had been told to pack only what they could carry and get on. The first transport ships available. 30,000 people, including children who had never seen Earth, were now refugees because the galaxy had decided humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to expand. "Sir," called Ensign Peter Hayes from the weapons station, "we're being hailed by the lead ship." "Put it on screen," Alan ordered. The image of a Zephyrian captain appeared on the viewing screen. His face was like sculpted blue glass, with features that were both beautiful and completely alien. When he spoke, his voice had a musical quality. That would have been pleasant if not for the threat in his words. "Human vessel, I am Captain Veth Kaller of the Zephyrian Navy. You are in violation of Galactic Council orders. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Alan stood up from his command chair. "I'm Captain Alan Mitchell of the UEC Defiance. This is human space, and we're not going anywhere." The alien captain's expression changed in a way that might have been surprise. "Captain Mitchell, surely you understand the situation. You have 1 ship. We have 12. This is not a battle you can win." "Maybe not," Alan said calmly, "but we're going to try." The alien captain made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species continues to amaze me with your capacity for self-destruction. Very well. You have chosen your fate." The screen went dark, and Alan turned to his crew. 23 men and women who had trained their entire careers for this moment. They were scared. He could see it in their faces, but they were also determined. They had sworn an oath to protect humanity, and they would keep that oath no matter what the cost. "All stations, report status," Alan ordered. "Weapons systems are online and ready," Peter Hayes called out. "We have full loads of missiles and energy weapons charged to maximum. Engines are running at full power," added Chief Engineer Maria. "Santos, we can maintain combat speed for 6 hours." "Shields are up and holding steady," reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Walsh from the tactical station. Then she added quietly, Anvil system is online and ready for activation. Alan felt a chill at those words. The Anvil system was humanity's secret weapon, something that even he didn't fully understand. He had been briefed on it just 24 hours ago, learning that his ship carried a device that could erase matter from existence. The scientists who had explained it to him had seemed frightened by their own creation. "Captain," Sophie called out, "the alien fleet is moving into attack formation. They're spreading out to surround us." Alan looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were positioning themselves in a perfect sphere around the Defiance, cutting off any escape route. It was a standard tactic when fighting a single enemy ship: surround it and destroy it from multiple angles. "They're confident," Kate observed. 12 ships against one. "They think this will be easy." "Let them think that," Alan said. "Open." A channel to Earth Command. The face of Admiral Carol Stevens appeared on a secondary screen. She was in the Pentagon Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Alan could see the strain on her face as she watched humanity's forces prepare for impossible odds. "Alan," she said simply, "are you ready?" "As ready as we can be, ma'am. The Anvil system is online." "Remember," Carol said, "once you activate it, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we're capable of." "I understand," Alan replied. "But they need to know that we won't go quietly." Carol nodded. "Good luck, Captain. Earth is counting on you." The screen went dark, and Alan turned back to face his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. In a few minutes, they would either be heroes or dead. There was no middle ground. "The alien fleet is in position," Sophie reported. "They're charging weapons." Alan looked at the tactical display one more time. 12 ships against one. Under normal circumstances, the Defiance would last maybe 30 seconds in a fight like this. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Kate," he said quietly, "activate the Anvil system." Lieutenant Commander Walsh entered a series of commands into her console. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as power was redirected to the mysterious device hidden deep in the ship's hull. Alan could feel a strange vibration through the deck plates, like the ship itself was changing somehow. "Anvil system is active," Kate reported. "All alien ships are within range." "Sir?" Peter Hayes called out. "The aliens are firing." On the main screen, Alan could see bright flashes of light as the alien weapons discharged. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the Defiance from all directions. In seconds, they would impact the ship's shields and the battle would begin. "Now," Alan said. Kate pressed a single button on her console. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy learned to fear humanity. The Anvil system activated with a sound like reality itself being torn apart. Space around the Defiance seemed to shimmer and bend, as if the laws of physics were being rewritten in real time. The alien ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in explosions of fire and metal, not torn apart by weapons or crashed into each other. They were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never existed at all. The energy beams and missiles that had been fired at the Defiance flickered out of existence, along with the ships that had launched them. The silence on the bridge was complete. Alan stared at the main screen, which now showed empty space where 12 enemy ships had been just seconds before. The tactical display showed no contacts, no debris, no energy signatures. "Nothing." "Report," Alan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "All alien contacts have been eliminated," Sophie reported, her voice shaking. "No debris, no wreckage, no survivors. They're just gone." "Anvil system is powering down," Kate added. "All systems are normal." Alan slumped into his command chair. They had done it. They had used humanity's secret weapon and erased 12 enemy ships from existence. But the cost of that victory was just beginning to sink in. "Send a message to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them that Operation Anvil is confirmed successful. The enemy fleet has been eliminated." As the message was transmitted, Alan thought about what they had just done. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans were capable when pushed to the edge. Now they knew, and across human space, similar scenes were playing out as other human ships activated their own anvil systems. The galaxy was about to learn that. Humanity had been preparing for this war since the day they first met aliens. The age of human expansion was just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was in complete chaos. Delegates from hundreds of species were shouting, clicking, roaring, and making sounds that had no names in any human language. The great curved walls that had seen thousands of years of peaceful debate now echoed with panic and fear. Ambassador Kethvaler stood at his position, his crystal body flickering with stress patterns that made him look like a broken window. His 4 arms were moving in gestures that showed confusion and terror. "This is impossible," he kept saying. 300 ships cannot simply disappear." "But they have," hissed the Serpentine delegate, her long body coiled in tight spirals that showed her species' equivalent of panic. "Entire fleets, on without. A trace, no wreckage, no survivors, no explanation." The reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Every fleet that had been sent to attack human colonies had vanished. Ships that had existed for centuries, crewed by thousands of beings, had simply stopped existing. The greatest military force in galactic history had been erased in less than 3 hours. Chancellor Mortess was struggling to maintain order, his massive slug-like body shaking with effort. His multiple eyes darted back and forth as he tried to process the impossible news. "Calm yourselves," he wheezed. "There must be an explanation." "The explanation is standing right there," said a voice from the center of the chamber. Every delegate turned to look at the lone human figure standing in the speaker's circle. Dr. Raymond Clark stood calmly, flanked by 2 human Marines in battle armor. He looked like a teacher who had been interrupted while grading papers, completely calm despite being surrounded by hundreds of terrified aliens. "You wanted to know how we did it," Raymond said, his voice carrying clearly through the chambers. "Acoustics. I'm here to tell you." The chamber fell silent. Even the most panicked delegates stopped their noise-making to listen to the human scientist. "For 15 years, we've been developing weapons," Raymond continued, "while you debated whether we were worthy of membership in your club. We prepared for the day you would try to destroy us." He activated a small device in his hand, and a holographic display appeared above his head. The image showed technical drawings and mathematical equations that made no sense to most of the delegates. "This is the anvil system," Raymond explained. "It doesn't destroy matter in the traditional sense. Instead, it convinces the universe that the target never existed in the first place. We've been testing it for over a decade." The Vorthan delegate, a creature that looked like a walking mountain of black rock, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Impossible. Such technology would require understanding of quantum mechanics beyond our greatest minds." "Beyond your minds," Raymond corrected, "but not beyond human minds. You see, we had something you didn't have. We had fear." The hologram changed, showing deployment patterns across human space. Little red dots appeared throughout the display, each one representing a weapon platform. "We knew from the beginning that we were outnumbered," Raymond continued. "We knew that if you ever decided we were a threat, you would try to wipe us out, so we prepared. We built 47 anvil platforms and installed them on our ships and stations. Each one can erase a solar system from existence." Gasps and sounds of horror echoed through the chamber. The delegates were beginning to understand that they hadn't been fighting primitives with crude weapons. They had been fighting a species that had turned the laws of physics into weapons of war. "But that's not all," Raymond said, and his calm smile became something frightening. We also developed phase technology that makes our ships invisible to all known sensors. We created temporal shielding that puts our colonies slightly out of sync with normal time, making them nearly impossible to attack. The hologram shifted again, showing a map of human space with thousands of red dots scattered throughout it. And then there's the Prometheus Protocol, Raymond said quietly. What is that? Chancellor Mortess asked, his voice barely a whisper. If humanity is ever faced with complete extinction, if Earth is ever threatened with destruction, we activate Prometheus. Every star within 50 light years of Earth becomes unstable and explodes simultaneously. We calculated that it would destroy roughly 2,000 inhabited systems. The chamber erupted in terrified chatter. Species that had conquered entire star systems, that had fought galactic wars spanning centuries, were faced with an enemy that had made mutual destruction into an art form. You're insane, the Zephyrian ambassador managed to say. No, Raymond replied calmly. We're human. We're a species that survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, and global wars. We're a species that learned to split atoms and then use that knowledge to build weapons that could destroy our own planet. We're a species that has always been willing to die rather than live as slaves. He paused and looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring at him in fear. You wanted to cage us, he continued. You wanted to keep us locked in our little corner of the galaxy like pets. But we're not pets. We're predators. And predators don't like cages. The silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, Chancellor Mortess spoke in a voice that shook with age and fear. What do you want? Simple, Raymond replied. Recognition that humanity has the right to exist and expand in this galaxy. Acknowledgement that we are not your subjects. And a promise that you will never again try to limit our growth. And if we refuse? Asked the Vorthan delegate. Raymond shrugged. And we continue to expand anyway. But if you try to stop us again, we won't just erase your fleets. We'll erase your home worlds. We'll erase your species. We'll erase everything you've ever built until the galaxy forgets you ever existed. The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. These aliens had spent thousands of years believing that civilization meant following rules, respecting authority, and avoiding conflict. They had never encountered a species that was willing to destroy everything rather than submit. You would commit genocide on that scale? The Serpentine delegate asked. We would commit any act necessary to ensure our survival, Raymond replied. That's what makes us human. Chancellor Mortess was quiet for a long time, his multiple eyes focused on some point in space that only he could see. Finally, he spoke. The Council will consider your terms. No, Raymond said firmly. The Council will accept our terms. You have 24 hours to make your decision. After that, we start expanding again, and anyone who tries to stop us will discover what the Anvil system can really do. He turned and walked toward the exit, his marine escorts falling into step beside him. As they reached the door, Raymond stopped and looked back at the chamber full of terrified aliens. You brought this on yourselves, he said. You could have left us alone. You could have let us grow and explore in peace. Instead, you tried to cage us. Now you know what happens when you cage a predator. The door closed behind him, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The delegates looked at each other with expressions of fear and disbelief. They had expected to crush a primitive species in a matter of hours. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. For the first time in galactic history, a species had not just refused to submit to the Council's authority. They had made the Council afraid that the age of human dominance had begun, and it had started with two simple words. Fine, war. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand what those words really meant. 6 months had passed since the war that lasted only 3 days. The galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace, but nothing was the same as it had been before. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority had been broken like a glass dropped. On stone, species that had followed council law for thousands of years now questioned every decision, every rule, every assumption they had made about how the galaxy worked. Admiral Carol Stevens stood on the bridge of the used Terran Pride, humanity's new flagship. The ship was massive, larger than anything humans had ever built before, and it used technology that would have been impossible just a year ago. Parts of the ship seemed to exist in multiple states at once, flickering between solid matter and something that looked like captured starlight. Carol was now 53, and the past 6 months had aged her more than the previous decade. Her hair was completely gray now, and her eyes held the weight of decisions that had changed the fate of entire civilizations. She wore the uniform of the human Space Force, newly designed with symbols that represented not just Earth, but all the worlds where humans had made their homes. "Ma'am," called Commander Ben Parker from his position at the communication station, "we're receiving a request from the Altarian Republic. They want to meet with us about a formal alliance." Carol nodded without surprise. The Altarians were the 7th species to approach humanity in the past month. The galaxy's power structure was changing as smaller species realized that the old order was finished. The Council could no longer protect them from aggressive neighbors, and some species were looking for new protectors. "Tell them we'll consider their request," Carol said, "but make sure they understand our conditions." The conditions were simple and absolute: complete respect for human territory, recognition of human colonies, and a promise never to interfere with human expansion. In return, humanity offered protection from aggressive species and access to some of the less dangerous human technologies. It was a new kind of relationship in the galaxy. Not the complex web of treaties and obligations that the Council had maintained, but something more direct. The strong protected the weak, and the weak gave loyalty in return. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Susan Davis from the sensor station, "we're detecting a large fleet approaching from the direction of the Council worlds." Carol felt her muscles tense. "Identification?" "Mixed Council ships, ma'am. But they're broadcasting diplomatic codes, not military ones." Carol relaxed slightly. "Put them on screen." The image that appeared showed a fleet of ships unlike anything she had seen before. They were clearly Council vessels, but they flew no battle flags and carried no weapons that she could detect. At the center of the formation was a ship that looked like it had been built from gold and silver, beautiful enough to be a work of art. "They're requesting permission to approach," Susan reported. "Granted," Carol said, "but keep our weapons charged." An hour later, Carol stood in the conference room of the Terran Pride, looking across a table at Chancellor Mortes. The old alien looked even more ancient than he had 6 months ago, his multiple eyes dim with exhaustion and defeat. With him were representatives from a dozen major species, including the Zephyrian ambassador who had been present at the original confrontation. "Admiral Stevens," Mortes began, his voice wet and tired, "the Council has come to offer a new relationship with humanity." "I'm listening," Carol said. "We propose full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. A seat on the ruling council, access to all galactic trade routes, and recognition of humanity as a major galactic power." Carol leaned back in her chair. 6 months ago, this offer would have been everything humanity had wanted. Now it seemed almost insulting. "And in return?" she asked. "We ask only that humanity agree to follow galactic law and respect the sovereignty of other species." "The same laws that you tried to use to cage us?" Carol asked quietly. Mortes was silent for a long moment. "The laws would be ... adjusted to accommodate humanity's unique position. Carol stood up and walked to the window that showed the stars outside. Somewhere out there, human ships were exploring systems that no other species had ever visited. Human colonies were growing on worlds that had been marked as uninhabitable by galactic survey teams. Human scientists were making discoveries that would change the understanding of physics itself. "No," she said finally. "Admiral?" Mortess sounded confused. "I said no. We don't want to be part of your council." The silence in the room was complete. The alien delegates looked at each other with expressions of shock and confusion. They had expected humanity to jump at the chance to join the most powerful organization in the galaxy. "You must understand," the Zephyrian ambassador said, his crystal voice filled with desperation. "This is an unprecedented offer. No species has ever been given such status so quickly." "And that's exactly the problem," Carol replied, turning back to face them. "6 months ago, you treated us like children who needed to be controlled. Now you want to treat us like equals because you're afraid of us. But we're not interested in being equals in a system that was designed to keep species like us in line." She walked back to the table and placed her hands on its surface, leaning forward to look each delegate in the eye. "We're going to do something different. We're going to build our own relationships with species that want to work with us. We're going to explore new parts of the galaxy that your council has never bothered to visit. And we're going to grow until we're strong enough that no one will ever try to cage us again." "You're talking about building an empire," Mortess said quietly. "Maybe," Carol admitted. "But if we do, it will be an empire where species join us because they want to, not because they have to. It will be an empire where strength protects the weak, instead of the weak being sacrificed to maintain peace." She stood up straight and looked at each delegate one more time. "Go back to your council. Tell them that humanity appreciates their offer, but we're not interested. We've chosen our own path." As the alien delegates filed out of the conference room, Carol felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Commander Ben Parker, who had been quietly observing the meeting. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" he asked. Carol looked out the window at the stars again. "I think we're doing the human thing. We're choosing freedom over safety, exploration over security. It's what we've always done." 3 hours later, Carl stood in the ship's communication center, watching as President Susan Blake appeared on the main screen. The president was calling from the Oval Office, but Carol could see through the windows behind her that it was night. "In Washington, how did it go?" Susan asked. "They offered us everything we thought we wanted," Carol replied. "Full membership, equal status, recognition as a major power. And I turned them down." Susan was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure that was the right decision?" "Ma'am, 6 months ago they tried to destroy us because they were afraid we might become too powerful. Now they want to make us part of their system because they're afraid we might become too independent. Either way, they're acting out of fear, not respect." Carol paused and looked at the star charts displayed on the walls around her. "We have 47 anvil platforms operational. We have phase technology that makes our ships invisible. We have colonies on worlds that other species thought were uninhabitable. We have weapons that can erase solar systems from existence. Why should we ask permission from anyone?" Susan nodded slowly. "What's our next move?" "We keep expanding. We keep exploring. We keep building relationships with species that want to work with us as equals. And if anyone tries to stop us..." Carol shrugged. "Well, they've already seen what happens when they try to cage humanity." The next day, Carol stood on the observation deck of the Terran Pride, watching as human ships prepared to jump to hyperspace. They were heading for the outer rim of the galaxy, where no council species had ever explored. The ships were carrying colonists, scientists, and explorers who are ready to build new worlds in the darkness between stars. Captain Jake Morrison joined her at the observation window. He had been promoted to head of the new human diplomatic corps, responsible for making contact with species that had never heard of the Galactic Council. Any regrets? He asked. Carol thought about the question. 6 months ago, she had been an admiral in a small military that everyone thought was primitive. Now she was the commander of the most feared fleet in the galaxy, leading a species that had rewritten the rules of galactic politics. None, she said finally. We gave them a choice. They could have left us alone and let us grow in peace. Instead, they tried to cage us. And now they know what happens when you cage a predator. They know that humans don't just fight to survive. We fight to win. She watched as the last of the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying humanity's future to places that had never known intelligent life. The galaxy wanted to know what we were capable of, she said quietly. Now they know, and they're going to spend the rest of their existence hoping they never have to find out what else we can do. Jake nodded. Think they'll try to stop us again? Some of them might, but they'll remember what happened to the last fleet that tried to cage humanity. They'll remember that we erased 3,000 ships from existence in 3 days. They'll remember